The blackest dyes. The devil's eyes.
Hail to the king, baby.
Boy! The plan is, kill the brain, and you kill the ghoul.
Welcome to hell.
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Welcome to prime time.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast in the Backseat. I'm of course Matthew Hutton, and with me today,
Wayne Alexander.
Always a pleasure to be here with you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic, just happy to be here, same as you.
Exactly right. I think today we've decided to review, almost, a film. I don't quite want to give the title away yet, because I imagine you're all expecting we're going to pick one of our favourites that we mentioned last week, which you've definitely listened to, and if not, go back, you mad thing. But it's definitely by one of our joint favourite directors, if you don't mind me speaking out of turn. Is that correct?
No, I totally agree. He's sort of the master.
Yeah.
They're trying to give it away again, but yeah, he's the master. And for a lot of people, that should be enough just to identify as to who we're kind of talking about.
Guaranteed, yeah.
But yeah, so we pick one of his films, maybe not a sort of bigger two, not to try and give it away again. Sort of one that has maybe less notoriety, which is it's not unfortunate. It's just the other two are just so well established that the third one sort of doesn't get as much recognition as maybe it should do. And on watching it again, possibly because we knew we were going to be reviewing it, I picked up so much more from it, and I think I've enjoyed it so much more than I did before, which is really good. And any time you can take something more away from it rather than agree with me if you want to, sort of sometimes you just let the movie wash over you and you don't sort of really think about it too much. But I think doing it the way that we've done it, I think it's been really interesting. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, I completely agree. And watching it this time round, especially in a reviewer's capacity, almost like we're mad professionals or something, it was almost as if the mist sort of came over your eyes and you could see it for the first time. I've given it away. Bugger it. Why not? We didn't want to blow our wads, as it were, on our favourite films just yet, especially with it being the first review one. But the film that we've decided to look at today, I'm sure you're all in suspense, is John Carpenter's The Fog, which I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, I should have researched it because I'm a professional, 1980 came out.
It is, yeah. I did a bit of research. I think it sort of came out in 1980. So it was his sixth movie. Correct me if wrong, anybody who happens to be listening, please do. We're not saying that, we know the ins and outs. I did a bit of research. So it's his sixth movie. It was his fifth horror film.
Nice.
So he sort of established himself as a horror mainstay, and that was kind of his following. That being said, 2 years later he did something completely different to the horror genre. Even before he did The Thing. Sorry, he did The Thing 2 years later, and the year after he did this, he did Escape from New York, both of which, Kurt Russell, that's enough for me to watch a movie. It's a phenomenal film.
That's interesting you say that, because that's true. I tend not to. I don't follow celebrity culture that much, and I don't feel like I'll watch something for an actor. But as you say, as soon as I heard in something like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which is a great movie anyway, but Kurt Russell's going to be in it, I was so excited. Or if I hear Jamie Lee Curtis is in something, I'm like, get in, I'll watch that. So maybe I am a bit more celebrity inclined as well. But you're right though, yeah.
But if you're thinking, if you're just sorry to interrupt, I was just thinking when it comes to like the likes of Kurt Russell, the guy's been working for, I think it's 6 decades. His body of work has been going, and just sort of, for me, it's I don't use the word gold standard, but it's a sign that it's a good movie. He's been working for so long that he can pick and choose as to what he wishes to do, and whenever he does anything, generally it'll be really, really good. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, phenomenal. The Thing, Escape from New York. There's loads of movies he's been doing since he started off as a Disney kid. So yeah, I'll gladly watch anything that has him in it. So
actually, the fog features somebody that I agree. Not Jamie Lee Curtis, which we'll get into as well. but features somebody else who I'd probably put not on par. No offense to him, but he's up there. He's one of the boys, as it were.
Yeah.
Tom Atkins. I don't know why I love him. Like, absolutely love him.
He's phenomenal. He's another horror mainstay. I love him in Night of the Creeps. Such a fun film that is very meta and very self-aware, and it's maybe a film that we can talk about at great length later on. Have you seen it before?
Yeah. Oh, it's so much fun.
I
watched it because he was in it.
Yeah, I think it's Fred Decker. Tell me if I'm wrong. But yeah, Fred Decker's the guy who directed that. He also directed Monster Squad, which is a phenomenal movie again.
Oh, I love that movie as well. But no, Tom Atkins. There's just so many big stars in this, because I know we're going to, stick with the facts at the moment. You've got Tom Atkins, obviously we've mentioned already. Jamie Lee Curtis, amazing. You've got a golden lineup there. Who could be better? Janet Leigh.
Phenomenal.
Janet bloody Lee. My God.
Like a horror royalty.
Queen.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of, it is weird to think that Janet Leigh was obviously renowned for being in Psycho. One, in my personal opinion, one of the greatest, not only horror films, but films of all time. And you think, there's no way her daughter is going to be able to go on and do as well as her mum at doing horror. And then she becomes a scream queen, possibly arguably more so than her own mother, which is amazing. But you didn't think you would get both of them, the two Lees, spelled differently in the same movie, which is great.
Yeah. She was also in, it was Bye Bye Birdie, which the only reason I watched that is another actor that I really like is Paul Lynde. I don't know why, it's probably just his voice. He's just amazing. But that film itself, though now has probably fallen into a little bit of obscurity, at the time was huge. It was absolutely enormous, and you watch Janet Leigh and you think, obviously she's an amazing actress, she really is, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a horror geek. But she can sing. She's just a jack of all trades. But enough about that. Enough about Bye Bye Birdie. That's not a horror, unless Paul Lynde's laugh is terrifying to you.
It's incredibly comedic. I just think he's brilliant. Obviously, he's a huge. Well, he is the influence for Roger the Alien from American Dad, and he's the best thing about it. Like the show would be poor for him not being in it. It's phenomenal. So I love him. I think
one of the best lines he ever had was in the last film he was in as well, where he plays a doctor, and I'm going to swear a little bit, I'm sorry guys, but he's like, he's a sperm doctor, and he drops him over, and he buzzes it, he drops him on his desk, and he buzzes his assistant to come in, he goes, "Shit, I just got sperm on my desk again." It's just perfect. It's like one of the last lines in his career.
What's it called? It's a swan song, isn't it? So it's the last movie you do before you die or you retire. Yeah. It's your kind of swan song. But yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that. In all honesty, I've never watched it beforehand. But if it's got, you see, my brains just went sideways. Is it Paul or Peter Lynde? Is it Paul Lynde?
Paul Lynde, yeah.
Paul
he was Uncle Arthur out of Bewitched.
Yes, that's where it is. That's where I realised that he's from. Where they recast the main character a couple of times, didn't they, through the course of the
Darren,
series?
Yeah. He died, actually. I'm not. This isn't the Bewitched thing. Oh dear.
He had the cheek to die.
I know. Shocking.
I know.
But yeah, to get back to the fog as well, and we.
Yes.
But yeah, to get back to the fog as well, even the opening. I'm sure the guy who reads the story to the children is a bigger actor than, I couldn't tell you his name.
It's John Houseman.
He's a discount Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, well, he's John Houseman. He's renowned for telling stories, to the point in the movie Scrooge, directed by Richard Donner, starring the amazing Bill Murray. He's the one that reads Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Whenever they're talking about doing it's the straight-laced version of Scrooge or Christmas Carol, before Bill Murray then shows his very horror-themed, post-apocalyptic version of A Christmas Carol. But yeah, that's John Houseman, and I didn't realise it was him. And a couple of little facts that will kind of drop through the course of our chat with Matt here is that he says, was it 5 minutes? Or 5 minutes to midnight?
Oh, yeah.
And he starts reading the story, and he says, and then it strikes midnight. It's not a full 5 minutes that expires before it then hits midnight, before the story then rolls in, and it becomes the fog. Setting the backstory as to what's happened 100 years. No, it's not. It's only people sort of that look into it, i.e. myself, where it's not a full 5 minutes. But that's besides the point. That if it was too long, then maybe it might be bloated. But I think that was all filmed in one day because the film wasn't long enough. So they decided, what we're going to do, we're going to use it like I don't think it's a framing device. It's just a preempt what happens in the story, which is really, really clever. And I think it adds to it. It's a whole folk tale.
Yeah.
So, to keep kids, from lighting campfires and things like that, which is quite cool. And that's something that people tell horror stories back in the day, would be around a campfire. It could be a crazed madman that escapes from the mental asylum. You get the guy with a hook for a hand. You've got all these different things as a means of keeping children in check.
It sets you up for the tone of the film.
Yeah, which is phenomenal. And it's like, it's 100 years. It's the centenary since the story happened.
Yeah.
But it's phenomenal.
Oh, another fact as well that I didn't notice until very recently. I did notice, not this time round, but a few times prior, in terms of who's in the film. Yeah. I didn't realise this until very recently, that John Carpenter himself features in it, and in fact features in a lot of his own films, like cameos, which is very surprising. But what's his name? Is it Bennett? The character's name's Bennett. He's the priest's
boy. For wanting the term of Bennett. Basically, it, as you just mentioned, not to contradict you in any way. Yeah. It makes sense for a director to be in his own movie, because that's a savings that then would have to come out of the budget for making the movie. If he can star in it, he's not going to pay himself anything, because he's already been paid as a director, probably a little bit more than everybody else that's in the movie, because he's the head honcho. He's the guy that the buck stops with the director, I would imagine, for the most part.
Plus, he doesn't credit himself in it, apparently, as well. And I checked, and it's true, he's not credited in the end credits at all, apart from director, obviously.
But Carpenter himself, he's iconic looking, and what I love about it, and this is of no detriment to the man I love very, very dearly, to the point of where I would have no qualms of getting a tattoo of him on my skin somewhere. Not the face, of course, but I love the fact that progressively over the last 30 or so years, he's slowly becoming Lo Pan from Big Trouble in Little China. It's the iconic mustache, it's the hair, it's just. And I love the man. It's not a detriment to him as an individual. It's not. I've just known that he's progressively becoming his own artwork, and I love that about him. But yeah, phenomenal man.
It's true though. It really is.
But I love the fact that he's in the movie. It's one of those ones that it's like, that's John Carpenter. John Carpenter's in another movie. Phenomenal. I mean,
I know the same. Like, buckle up. Here he is. It's true though. Like, because. Oh, I don't know. Like, I remember the first time I watched it, and realised he was in it. I was watching it for the first time with my partner, and I paused it, and she's looking at me like, "What the hell are you doing?" That's John, and I was screaming, "That's John Carpenter!" She's like, "Yeah, okay. I've seen this film 100 times and just now noticed." God.
It's like what's the one that gets me? There is a fighter pilot from Star Wars: A New Hope. Whenever they're doing the run, and it's the guy who basically gives Indiana Jones the mission in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm going,
is that actually? I'm going to have to rewatch that.
But yeah, he's an X-Wing pilot. That's the guy. Well, I think he's an X-Wing pilot. But going, that's the guy. And he's also Ducard. I think it's Ducard in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman.
Really? Oh,
he's like the sleazy guy with I think he gets shot or he gets knocked over or whatever by the Joker. In Ace Chemicals.
Yeah, it will be if it's the Joker.
Yeah, if it's Joker, it's Ace Chemicals. He's the one that goes in and trashes the place and everything else. But he gets shot towards the end of the opening bit of the movie, I think. But yeah, that's the same guy. He's in Batman, he's in Star Wars, and he's in Indiana Jones. So. A winner.
That's class. That's so cool.
So, like, for me, anybody, please, if you are listening, please drop us a message on our Instagram page, Still in the process of getting that all sorted out, which is at Podcast in the Backseat. If there's any information we've left out, anything you wish to even correct us about, we're not saying that we know it inside out. Please drop us a message on there.
Or if there's any,
if
there's any other actors that you didn't realise appeared in multiple things, we'd love to know. It's for some reason it's those little gems when you hear it. It's like, that's amazing. Like, well, when you found out Bill Paxton got killed off a Predator, Terminator, and an Alien.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. So if you've got any more, what was the Instagram again, just so people can...
Matthew, that is at Podcast in the Backseat.
Oh, excellent. I might have to write to that. Follow suit. So anyway, about the fog.
So about the fog, yes, obviously we've covered a few little bits and pieces when it was set, the precursor to the story kicking off, the fact that it stores 2 horror legends, and the director cameos in his own movie, which is absolutely phenomenal. What I also didn't realise until afterwards, Napoleon Wilson from Assault on Precinct 13 cameos as Dr. Phoebes, which is another tie-in to a film that both you and I adore, which is the abominable Mr. Phoebes, isn't it?
I think it's the abominable Dr. Phoebes.
Phoebes or Fives, yeah.
Vincent Price, isn't it?
It's Vincent Price, yeah. Phenomenal movie. Not to go off on a tangent, as we tend to do so anyway. Vincent Price, who I have etched in my skin and waving it at a camera at Matthew, which unfortunately you guys can see, or fortunately can't see.
It's good.
Vincent Price was such a consummate professional. He would not only learn his own lines, he would learn also the entire script. So even though in the abominable Dr. Phoebes, Barbarian's Gone out the abominable Mr. Phoebes, he learned his lines and also the others, despite the fact that the vast majority of it he would just record his lines after the fact. They would dub them in because he doesn't actually physically speak. So all he would have to do would flex his vocal cords or his Adam's apple to make it look like he was speaking, and they would dub it in, but he still learned all his lines and everybody else's. It's a phenomenal man.
I've been working on his voices. If those of you who don't know, you might if you've listened to my other podcast. I'm a voice actor as well, and I've worked on a couple of things professionally. I've actually been practicing Vincent Price. I'm nowhere near. Like, no, if I can do that, that will be my voice from now on, to be fair.
But yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's that voice. It's just phenomenal. Anyway, we'll get back to the
tangents.
The topic at hand, which is obviously.
That's another thing. It's funny you mentioned about Dr. Phoebes is the name of the character of the doctor that's in the film of The Fog. Sorry. There's another one that I didn't realise, and this is the very first time when I was watching The Fog this time round. The main character in it, Tom Atkins, the only time you hear his name, and I might be wrong, he calls the phone to speak to Stevie Wayne, who's the Lighthouse radio lady, and he says, "You don't know me, but my name's Nick Castle." I paused the film and screamed at it again. Nick Castle, of course, being the name of the original shape out of 1978's Halloween. There's just so many horror nods. This film itself is such a love letter to horror pre-1980s, 1980 because that's when it came out. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And a homage to him, to Carpenter himself, mind you.
It's good, because why not? Well, why not have a nod back to a film that you made 2 years ago? Maybe it's a big thank you to the guy that portrayed the iconic The Shape, Michael Myers, which is just phenomenal movie, which kind of set
I couldn't believe it
for slashers. Yeah, it's brilliant. And it's love of, I believe, it's Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
Other carbonated soft drinks are available.
But only serial killers drink Dr. Pepper.
What's the worst that could happen?
Oh dear.
Oh
man.
On a personal note, before we actually get into the review of the movie, I have a personal kind of love and affinity for this movie because in the northeast of England there's a beautiful lighthouse called St Mary's Lighthouse, and I had the good fortune to spend a night with some friends watching the movie projected on the inside wall of a lighthouse overseeing what could be described as a similar bay to the Fog, which is San Antonio, am I right?
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool though. You got to see that at the. Oh.
But what the creepiest thing about the whole thing was, obviously there was a lot of body heat, there was a lot of breathing, possibly due to panic or just anxiety or whatever else it is. The windows steamed up on the inside of the lighthouse, and the only other light apart from the projector, throwing the movie up onto the wall, was the light from a faraway lighthouse just flickering through the room every now and again, almost like some sort of freaky heartbeat going along with the movie. So that enhanced the movie, and I think sort of I was so caught up in watching it that I didn't pick up on the little intricacies that we've picked up on now, which is really, really good. Little homages, little tip of the hat to previous horror movies that the same director's done, or even ones that have happened beforehand with the likes of Vincent Price, which is phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so jealous though, being able to watch that projected on such a atmospheric environment. It's incredible. God. Mind, there's a fair few other, in terms of just facts again before we jump straight into the meat of it all. If I'm not mistaken, there's a few other cameos. Carpenter, obviously, he's an auteur, as it were, so that's, for those who don't know, there's filmmakers, there's directors, and there's auteurs. Now, auteurs, the term basically means they've got a signature and they have a cast that they tend to use an awful lot. Carpenter easily falls into that, so does the likes of Tarantino, etc. But even some of his bit players, if I'm not mistaken, Janet Leigh is in it, married to a character who dies in the Seagrass at the beginning. The character is portrayed by the fellow in Escape from New York, who claims to be the president. He's a bit mad. And also, if you've seen They Live, he's the guy that sells out humanity as well. So there's a lot.
Yeah. I never picked up on that. I'm going to have to watch that again, it's another one of those movies where that movie becomes more relevant every year and becomes more and more a horror as the years pass.
It's terrifying.
Yes, but I didn't realise I'm going to have to rewatch They Live, because obviously it's such a powerful movie that just gets better and better with age. But it's more powerful as the years have gone by, which is phenomenal. Yeah, brilliant.
And I might be wrong, and I might be overthinking it. There's a younger fellow in the Seagrass as well. I'm not sure, and I haven't looked into it, so I'm sorry. That guy is the same person who plays Jimmy in Halloween 2.
Right.
He just looks an awful lot like him. I should have probably looked into that. I'll be honest. I'm sorry. And if it is, and if he's listening, I love you. Please write to our Instagram. But I think they're the only ones I could see. Oh no, actually, tell a lie. Janet Leigh's assistant is also, I forget the actress's name, but she's Annie from the original Halloween. She's in Halloween 3 as well. And of course there's Adrienne Barbeau as well.
Adrienne Barbeau is Stevie Wayne,
who at the time was married to John Carpenter, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe she was, yes. I always get her mixed up with Matt, jump in. What's the name of the lady he always works with, who's maybe the
Deborah Hill. Yeah.
That's the one. Deborah Hill. So I got the two of them mixed up, but it's Adrienne Barbeau, who does the voice of the chess wizard in 1982. 1980. 1982 is the thing?
Yeah. She has a great voice as well, mind you.
Yeah, a phenomenal movie. And obviously she went on to star in obviously, as Matt's already said, a bunch of other John Carpenter movies. Phenomenal lady, whom I love very, very much. So.
Did you know as well, in terms of voiceovers as well, that you wouldn't expect? Jamie Lee Curtis actually features in Halloween 3 very briefly as well.
Alright, Season of the Witch with Tom Atkins again.
The guy, honestly, it's an underrated movie, and will definitely towards Halloween do all of the Halloween films probably, but she's the voiceover that tells everyone that the lockdown's occurring, or what is it, the curfew is come out, so in the town. That's Jamie Lee Curtis, which I only found out last year as well.
That's amazing. Yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis is just phenomenal. Scream Queen.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know if you've got any other facts. I've got one little tidbit, as it were, in terms of, and these aren't criticisms. To make a film, a lot of work goes into it, and that's why we're coming to these films from a place of love. John Carpenter is a master, but he's not perfect. What I'm getting at is mistakes in films, and I did notice one, and there's not many. He's very detailed. I noticed one, which I think I mentioned to yourself, and I didn't tell you what it was because I thought I'd keep it fresh.
Yeah, I wanted to hear it firsthand from yourself. So yeah, what was the mistake? We'll not use the term mistake. Instead, what happened? What did you notice?
Yeah, there was something I noticed when Tom Atkins picks up Jamie Lee. They're having their conversation, which is a delightful back and forth. But nobody in the history of the world is ever lucky enough to pick up somebody like Jamie Lee Curtis and say, "I must be unlucky," for her to turn around and say, "We'll see," or whatever it was. Tom, you lucky sod. But anyway, the glass all shatters. Now, as the glass shatters, what you'll notice is Jamie Lee covers her face, as you would. You don't want glass in your eyes. She's wearing a protective glove, a protective metal glove, which you will if you're going around any sort of. For a split second, you'll see that glove appear. The next scene, it cuts back to her. She's not wearing any gloves at all. Tiny little mistake, but I'll be honest, in the fog I couldn't think, because I was looking, I couldn't see any other ones, to be fair. So if that's as bad as it gets, he's doing something well. And
considering I think the film was shot in like a month, I think it was shot over like 30 days, that's a lot of logistics involved in making such a phenomenal movie. There's bound to be continuity errors, but for you to only find one is really, really good.
Yeah, because I was looking, because I quite like, I think they're interesting. So like you're watching a period piece and you see a plane in the background or something. I just think it's kind of charming. But for something like that, it was for Jamie Lee's safety as well. I'm not going to criticise anyone for that.
Whoa, so Matt, just to jump in here a second, are you telling me you don't want glass in your eyes?
Not again, God.
You know what? I think you've overstepped here. You know what? Maybe I do want glass in my eyes. But if I'm going to do a horror film, I'm going to do a method. I'm going to do it the Tom Cruise way. I'm not going to have any concern for my safety. I'm going to do all my own stunts, and I want glass in the eyes. I want to be permanently, irreparably damaged for the rest of my days. You go, how did you lose that eye, Mr. Alexander? Well,
I've got video proof. The next scene where she's in bed with Tom Atkins talking about doing drawings, she's got like blood seeping out of her eye.
She's wearing that eye patch, which then becomes a mainstay for Escape from New York. Yeah, that's where we got the idea, where she was irreparably damaged and loses her depth perception because she decided she didn't want to wear a metal glove when they shattered glass in her face.
The name's Jamie.
But yeah, but that's if that's only one that you could pick out, that's phenomenal. That's really good. One thing I realised.
Oh, go on, sorry.
No. The only thing I was going to say is something I picked up on. I looked at it a little bit myself, and I never realised until kind of afterwards. Is the two leads in the movie never meet?
That's a good point.
So Stevie Wayne never meets Nick Castle and Jamie Lee Curtis. They never meet.
They have one phone conversation.
That they never meet in person. It's the one that blew me away, which I never knew this about the movie. The Fifth Element shares the same thing, that the two leads, the protagonist and the antagonist, never physically meet in person.
Oh, of course, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
They never meet, which is very, very clever. It's very clever to get away with that, and nobody then realise that until after the fact. But they never physically meet. They are never in the same room at the same time, and maybe that's an artistic choice. Maybe that's like maybe they should never meet. The whole idea is that you meant to keep that distance in order to survive the fog or make your way away, get yourself away from it.
Yeah, but one has a direct control over what happens to the other. So she's obviously on the radio telling Tom where to go to get away from the fog. So and obviously he reports what happens to her. So they both affect each other quite massively. yet never meet. I had never even thought. Nice.
The two of them never meet. And that could be seen as, like I said, that could be an artistic or a writing choice, or it could have been a logistic one, where maybe Adrienne Barbeau was scheduled to do other work at that particular time, so she had to shoot her scenes separately, and they didn't have to interact. But yeah, or it could have been that was an artistic choice that they made. Either way, it plays very, very cleverly, and it's the point where you don't realise it until maybe afterwards that they never physically meet each other. So I love that about the movie, and it made me enjoy it even more. And those little bits and pieces that we've covered already, I enjoy and appreciate that film so much more, knowing how much work went into it, and the fact that he's an author, and it sort of leans into so many horror tropes and little nods here and there. And it's for those people that have a love in the same way that we do of the genre itself. So I love that.
No, every time, in The Fog specifically, because I'll watch Carpenter movies almost weekly, to be honest. I'll just put one on. If I'm in any sort of mood, I'll think, Escape from New York, why not? Put it on, have a whiskey, enjoy the crack. But every time I watch The Fog, I always notice something new, and I guarantee there's probably something I'll notice next time I watch it. And it's such as you mentioned earlier, an underrated film in his body of work. Which is saying something really, because it's very celebrated still, but it's not quite as celebrated as something as like The Thing or Halloween or even Escape from New York. And I think it weirdly doesn't get as much notoriety, despite the fact it gets loads of notoriety. A lot of work's gone into it, and as you say, the nods. Carpenter's a huge fan of horror, clearly. Everyone involved loves what they're doing, and they're happy with each other.
I think that translates to the screen. You can tell that these people have gotten really, really well. They thoroughly enjoy the genre, and that's what they wish to do it. And which obviously shows as so many of those people went then on to do so much more horror-related work. The director himself, Tom Atkins, Jamie Lee Curtis, Adrienne Barbeau, phenomenal.
Oh, I love it. There's one last little bit I wanted to bring up, because I just thought it was charming, to be honest with you. John Carpenter, in an interview, I can't remember where it was I was watching, but somebody asked him about the child. There's one child in it. It's Adrienne Barbeau's son. He finds a coin, comes back, wakes up his mother, like the little git that he is, wakes her up, and then asks his mother if he can have a stomach pounder and a Coke. Now, during an interview with John Carpenter, somebody asked him, what exactly is a stomach pounder and a Coke? Because the line that preceded it was that superseded it was after breakfast. So what is it then? Because it's clearly not food then. Is he going to get punched and do a line? Like what's going on? And apparently it was just John Carpenter freeballing. He couldn't say quarter pounder for some reason. So it must be food. So it literally means nothing. If you ever wondered what a stomach pounder is, it's nothing.
Right.
It's not a punch in the gut after breakfast, followed by some hard drugs.
What that makes me think of is that have you seen Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah.
And George Wells, aka Bennett, possibly one of the greatest villains of all time. I just adore that movie. So, in the movie, the opening credits, with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Alyssa Milano, he's eating a sandwich and says, what's in the sandwich? And she says, you don't want to know. I've always wanted to know what was in that sandwich. For me, I think it's probably some sort of horrible sandwich spread or hummus, and I'm not a fan of hummus. Don't get me wrong, being vegetarian, I should love that stuff with some crudité or whatever else I wanted to have with it. This is an exclusive for anybody listening. I despise hummus. This for me horrible taste. It's scarier than any horror film that I've ever seen. But I suspect what he's eating is hummus. No, I'm not on board whatsoever.
It's the next horror film. It's just a jar of hummus or tub or whatever it comes in. Bucket of rancid hummus. You chase it after you. In a world where hummus is just disgusting.
It'll be like The Stuff.
Yeah.
which another which I think is another Larry Franco movie. I think he might have actually directed that one, because Larry Franco, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who happens to be listening, produced this movie, along with The Thing, and I think Escape from New York, I could be wrong. But The Stuff, great movie, but if they were to change that from some sort of, I assume, marshmallow fluff, if that was to be changed to hummus, the film would be entirely changed and made all the more terrifying and more present day for me. But yeah, hummus, no.
Hummus with a human eye sticking out of it. He's coming for you.
I'll be the only one that survives the movie because I'm the only one that's not going to eat the stuff. You know, I'll be honest with you, I'm entirely fine with that.
This is very personal. I've been working out a lot more, trying to lose a bit of lockdown weight. I won't go into what time of life this is, I suppose. So yesterday, my entire lunch was a spoonful of hummus. I was starving. So I'm okay with it. I'll die first in that horror film that we're going to make, clearly. The hummus. God. But yes, the fog.
I'll be right back. I'm just going to eat a spoonful of hummus. Never to be seen again. But yeah, I think myself and Matt, we decided the way we were going to hopefully look at movies and review them, not to try and sort of jump back on the tracks, etc., is to try and sort of pick the movie apart based on the senses, or maybe ones that are perceived throughout the course of the movie. So obviously certain ones you're not going to be able to actually have and enjoy, such as like the likes of taste, feel and things like that, even smell to a certain extent. You know, obviously that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to get that, but the movie may convey a particular sense or what we would assume that would smell or taste or feel like. So what did you feel about the sound about the movie?
Yeah, so I think it's wise that you jump straight into sound with it being John Carpenter as well, who's probably the master of sounds, as it were, and especially in horror. You can't fault him on it. The sound work on The Fog, the theme, it's beautiful. I'm a huge fan of, obviously, the John Carpenter themes. He's released them as an album even as well, and when The Fog comes on, it pulls you straight back into the film. He has that signature. He has something that hook that will just pull you straight back into it.
Yeah.
And he's got this wonderful. There's parts in it as well where you hear a sound before you see something happen. And he does a lot of background work, as you know, which we'll get into on one of the other senses. But the sound itself brings with it a huge sense of foreboding, especially the scene in the hospital room with Jamie Lee sat there alone. They're having a conversation about this guy lying on the bed, who's been underwater for what appears to be months. And you know something's going to happen even before you see him move. The sound itself in a Carpenter film, and this is 100% true of The Fog, is a character in itself.
Yeah. I think it's that. Yeah. It's another presence within the space of the movie. It's another entity. It's not just something that needs to be there in order to fill any gaps. It's separate or to sort of ramp something up. I think it is very much as a palpable presence throughout the course of the movie with that kind of stuff, which is amazing. He's phenomenal. It's, like you said, he's renowned for his soundtracks to the point of where he's done a tour across the world just playing music from his movies and then doing his own albums, etc., which is really, really good. But yeah, phenomenal sound for the movie.
But there's even because his diegetic to non-diegetic sounds, so his soundtracks are amazing. But the sounds that, because the meaning of diegetic to non-diegetic for those who aren't filmly inclined, is diegetic is something that characters in the movie can't hear, essentially, where non is other sounds, so sound effects, things like that. So there's beautiful bits where I forget her name, Stevie Wayne is driving to work, and you hear that foghorn going off.
Yeah.
And these long drawn out scenes, and she turns the radio on and stuff. It's just the man's an artist when it comes to sound. Like, it pulls you. The atmosphere it brings is amazing. Like,
it's I'm glad you mentioned one of the things that I took away from the movie is that there would be in real life or within the confines of a lot of movies where there will be aspects of silence. There is not a single point in the movie where there's not some sort of background noise. And some people might use silence as a means to then make people think what's going on, what's happening, why is it suddenly silent, and then something happens. There's something constantly ticking over, something constantly going throughout the course of the movie. That can be you've got the sound of the waves at the start of the movie, and you've got the ringing of the petrol pump as you can see that the fog's taking over the little town in the bay. You've got the radio from the cars. Like I said, the alarms going off from the cars, waking everybody up in the precursor before everything sort of kicks off with the movie. The sultry tones of Adrian Barbeau and Stevie Wynn throughout the course of the movie. There's just loads of amazing kind of sounds, and I'm glad that you sort of mentioned is about was it diegetic was the term you used?
Yeah.
Diegetic. You know what? I've learned something. Thank you very much, Matthew. But yeah, that's something. Yeah, it's something that the characters can hear and what they can't hear. That's phenomenal. But yeah, there's no sound from the shapes themselves, which I thought was quite creepy. They are entirely without sound, but everything else happening for the viewer and the listener is ramping that tension up. And the only thing that you kind of hear is the swinging of the weapon. And they could have made a noise, they could have maybe had a voice or even just breathing, but they don't. They are entirely silent. Only their actions, the things in which they do, the impact that they have on the characters and the surrounding around them are the things that make noise, which would make it terrifying for you as a potential victim. You would hear nothing. They would creep up on you, you would just see the fog, the shape, and then your untimely demise. Or your timely demise, maybe you might have been a horrible person prior to this fog rolling in. But yeah, that's something
that nanny, she was clearly up to something.
Yeah.
She deserved it.
Oh yeah. Well, she's probably taking the kids' stomach pounders, and that's what's happening, and recreational drugs. But yeah, that's possibly what it is. She's been hoarding, she's been stealing stomach pounders, and that's.
She deserved everything she got.
Yeah, and there is. We'll touch on this at some point in a later podcast. Is that some people, as you get older, I find I root for the villain in a slasher and going, yeah, they shouldn't be doing that stuff. That's terrible. Kill him. Yeah, Michael, Jason, Freddy, kill that guy. I hate him.
Off your trot.
If you go play,
but actually,
kill him.
It's interesting you say that, because with the fog as well, there's no one apart from the nanny that were mentioned there, that evil thing. But everyone else in it, you feel for, like you don't want them to die. I mean, maybe the scathy sort of weatherman, but apart from that, that's another John Carpenter regular. God, there's loads of them in it. I only thought there was a few. He was the dad out of Halloween.
Phenomenal! I didn't realise that was the case. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even if he does play a semi-perverted weatherman in it.
He just wants to listen to that voice. He's never met her. He's just in love with her voice. You know what? I totally get it. There's a few people who are going, that's a beautiful voice. What's her name? Bride of Chucky.
Oh, I know who you mean. She's in.
I was going to say her name's Jennifer, but it's not.
Jennifer Tilly. Yeah.
I was right. I was half right. I got the first name right. Jennifer Tilly has got this phenomenal, beautiful, smoky voice. Yeah, so that's one of those ones. That, yeah, sort of. I could kind of get as to why somebody. Oh yeah, that's a beautiful voice. That is. Yeah, I'm going to ring this lady and just give her the radio news. I'm also trying to find out what she's up to, and she's constantly trying to fob him off, and then she tries to save him later on, which is phenomenal.
I think when you're on about sound as well, it's interesting that we're talking about voices even there. You've got the iconic Jamie Lee scream in it, clearly, because Jamie Lee's in it and she screams, which is interesting because it becomes a bit of a staple as well to certain horror. Because anything that she's in, I only very recently saw Prom Night, which is a phenomenal movie as well. But the scream, it stands out. You know, you could look away, hear Jamie Lee, which sounds horrible, scream, and know it's her. You've got obviously Adrian Barbeau. I always get her name wrong. Is it Barbeau or Bardot?
I think it's Barbeau.
Barbeau, yeah. amazing voice. Carpenter himself has a very iconic voice as well when you think about it. But you've got Janet Leigh. Her voice is just she could do radio well, and you know again who it is. But that ties in really well with the dialogue as well. When you actually watch The Fog, when I was watching it this time, there is no wasted dialogue whatsoever.
No,
even just the incidental conversation between Janet Leigh. Yeah, but between Janet Leigh and her assistant. All of that kind of just it kind of builds tension as well. Like Janet Leigh's character in it, which I do forget the name of the character, which is awful. She's already tense because her husband's missing, and you've got this assistant who doesn't seem to be any help whatsoever. She's just kind of a bit miserable herself. But towards the end, they have a bit of an arc almost, which is weird, because towards the end she's even looking out for her. And I think at one point she says, Janet Leigh even says to her, you can make yes ma'am sound like screw you and stuff like that. And the back and forth on it, it's so beautiful that it makes you root for the characters, which again ties into what we were saying before. Is it Bennett? Is the priest? No, Bennett. Oh, I forget the priest's name. He's possibly the only one that you didn't root for a little bit because he's a bit miserable.
He loves it. He loves a glass of wine or port or whatever else. It's some sort of beautiful red liquid that he's just quaffing while sending his boy John Carpenter off. Can I get paid? Coming at 6. Answer my question. Give me my money. Is basically what he wants to do, but he's not giving the money. He still hasn't got paid.
I like how Carpenter's character is in such a huff he leaves without his radio.
He does. But yeah, but it's sort of, and it's even him. He's not the one that's done the thing that's terrible. It's his ancestors have done something terrible. And not to give too much of the story away, and I don't think that's what we intended to do. We don't want to give anything away as to what happens through the course of the movie. But it's not him. He's haunted by the sins of the father or the grandfather or whoever his ancestors were. Have done something terrible, which is why the town is in such deep expletive through the course of the movie, because somebody has done something bad, and arguably for good reason to a certain extent. So you can understand why people do, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's sort of going. I could sort of understand why maybe people have done that beforehand, misdirection, and sort of doing something horrible. But as a result, the children then have to pay, or the entire bay for that fact. But yeah, really, really good. I think the sound in it is phenomenal. Nothing is wasted. Dialogue, soundtrack, diegetic, and as you said, non-diegetic sounds. It's all used really, really well, and to great effect.
I think the last point I had noticed on sound was, and I had to look this up even, they use a lot of jazz music in it, which was apparently the only reason they used jazz was because it was cheaper than rock and roll. So the soundtrack would have been a bit more rock and rolly otherwise.
But I think that goes in with it well. I think that's sort of one of the things that you've just mentioned there as well, as far as sound is concerned, is the sound's phenomenal. Yes, it's got the jazz and stuff in the background, which maybe differentiates itself from that kind of era where it probably would have been rock music. But the sort of the soundtrack itself, aspect of it are almost it's travelling back in time. It's like the harpsichord music as it sort of ramps up certain aspects of it. But I think from what I remember, it's whenever the shapes are in place throughout the course of the movie. I think that's almost like a harpsichord music, which is quite creepy in itself, because despite it being a beautiful instrument, it's quite discordant. Discordant sounding, which then puts people on edge. You don't want it to be beautiful and melodic. You want it to be a little bit off key, which then unsettles you. But I think, very, very clever. And the fact that it does use a different type of music would differentiate itself from any other kind of radio in a movie.
No, definitely. You can't fault the sound. I think that it's top quality. It's Carpenter in it.
Yeah, of course it is. It's phenomenal. I keep on using that word. I'm going to try and avoid using it too much. Phenomenal.
But that's, I mean, It ties in well. The sound always ties in well with visuals. So we'll move on, obviously, to another sense, unless you've got more with the sound as well.
No, that's I was literally going to segue into
the harpsichord plays. Oh yeah, plays really well with the visual of them actually appearing. Mm-hmm. So what were your main sight notes?
The lighting. Obviously, lighting's a huge thing for movies. You can tell whenever a movie's sort of I don't want to use the term lesser quality, but if it's not as well lit, you can tell. It makes all the difference as to how the characters look and react and everything else. The mains that I took away from it, whether this was intentionally done or unintentionally, was the colours that the characters wear throughout the course of the movie. So the sight, as far as what I concentrated as to what they were wearing, rather than the overall visual for the movie. So they wear there's a lot of reds and blended blues, and they're sort of the faded greens, which kind of links in with what a sunrise and a sunset would be. You've got that sort of over the bay, and we probably know now that that's possibly pollution, but that kind of mirrors with the green of the fog, but also the green of the moss on rocks and the lighting from sort of like a sunrise and a sunset, which you would be able to beautifully see on a horizon over a coastline. So I felt, personally, whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, that matched the colours that the characters wear. There's nobody wearing anything particularly gaudy or bright or garish throughout the course of the movie. It kind of matches up with the people that then would live and work in that Bay Area. That they're going to be fishermen, they're going to be looking after the everything that kind of surrounds them. But yeah, that's something I kind of picked up from it. As far as sight's concerned, whenever the fog does come in, it gives you this almost sort of, it's like a dreamlike sequences that's happened throughout the course of the movie, which made me think of like Edgar Allan Poe. I think that's the opening statement, is a dream within a dream. But yeah, that's what I took away from it, was sort of the colours, the shapes and the shadows and the silhouettes of the monsters within the movie. Visually, it's fantastic, even whenever it comes to the likes of the fog itself. Whenever it retreats, obviously it's clearly been filmed in reverse, so the fog then moves backwards or moves in the wrong direction as the way it's supposed to be, which then makes it incredibly creepy. It shouldn't move that way. But yeah, visually, really, really good movie.
No, I agree completely. And as you were saying, it's very hard to work with mist or fog or something like that as well. Mm-hmm. And I think the reverse trick that they do comes off really well. The only time you see that happen is when nothing else is going on in the scene as well. So there's nothing for you to notice. You don't see a cog driving weirdly because it's clearly being reversed, but driving forwards, if you know what I mean. He didn't try to get clever with it. He kept it very subtle. In terms of visuals, the main thing I picked up on, because everything that you mentioned there, exactly right as well, is the locations. Like, clearly the film had to be shot on location, that's the point, but it's such a beautiful place, and you forget almost, it's, with me having always lived in England, it almost feels like an English countryside or a coastal town almost as well. So for me, it kind of really brought it a little bit home. So I feel like I live near about an area like that almost. Like, even yourself mentioned earlier, we have lighthouses nearby. Even
it's not that, so yeah, and I think it's maybe, obviously I don't think that the director could intentionally do that, because not every country will be the same. But for me, I live close by to something where that exists, with the rolling hills, the cliffs overlooking the beach, and then the rocks and everything else. That makes it more real for me. It makes it more tactile for me, and that's really, really good. But yeah, it's something that makes it more terrifying and more creepy. I know a place that looks like that, which is really, really cool. Very
personal. And my mind always goes back to that. So I don't know anybody in the world who's ever seen this movie during a foggy day and didn't think of that movie. It's the first thing you think of now. Especially in an area like that. If I'm in a sort of coastal area and it's foggy, in a way, almost pretend I'm in the movie a little bit, like just to be like, "Ooh, I'm there." Say ahoy there, mateys, on the radio, please.
Another aspect I was going to mention as well was about other visuals within the course of the movie, that like the sunrise and the sunset and the beautiful hills and everything, as you mentioned, the beautiful vistas. It's almost like a reprieve from the horror. And I think we'll probably talk about it at some point, like certain horror movies will have a comedic element to it in order to put it opposite on the other end of the scale of something that's happened scary, because it cannot be, for me personally, I don't think you can sustain horror the whole way through the course of the movie without having little brief breaks in order to kind of give people time to breathe and then move on, and then it ramps back up again. But yeah, I think it was a beautiful reprieve from the horror with the vistas and the beautiful music and everything else in the background, which is really good.
No, I agree completely. Because there's not much comedy in that. There shouldn't be, to be fair. Those reprieves had to come across through the calming, establishing shots more than anything, which is nice.
Exactly.
And that really ties in, to be perfectly honest, with and I'm going to combine them a little bit here. The sort of smell, taste, as well. So smell and taste, as it were, and almost feel. So not to be that guy, but the visuals and the sound as well, to a degree, all bring the rest of it together almost. So the way you put yourself in that position, and again, because I've been to coastal towns before, I know how it smells. So when I'm watching that, immediately that hits me again. I'm like, the familiarity comes back. I can almost smell how it is. You can taste it in the air and the feeling as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, that I would totally agree. Sort of, if you have been anywhere like a coastal town, there's an almost there's a taste to the air. There's the sea spray. There's the freshness that comes with it, which comes across in the movie with those establishing shots, and obviously the ones where there's the shots on the ship itself. Before things go sideways for the poor inhabitants of said ship, and then there's the smell which goes along with it as well, and then even like you said, the texture, touch of it, you can almost feel it's like the wet wood, the moss, the slipperiness of it, the seaweed to a certain extent, and that constant feeling of like a breeze as well. So it's definitely, it does cover, for me personally, the five senses. Absolutely,
because it could be the brightest summer day, and you're in a coastal area, you will always get the wind chill, and you can feel it every time. I think that's the main difference as well, because the rest of them kind of combine a little bit almost, because I've really got much more to say on that one, except feeling as well. You can go into a little bit more with the atmosphere as well. So you physically watching it, how you feel watching it as well, it does make you feel tense at the right times as well. Especially the end. That end is sublime. It's very Carpenter as well.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of like I said, we're not here as a means to try and ruin the movie for anybody who hasn't watched it. Yeah. It's got a very good ending whereby it sort of leaves you wanting more rather than wanting less. Or be like, is that it over and done with? You get some movies where it is just a shortcut. Get the beautiful music in the background. The final girl, off she goes. She survived to live another day. Whereas this has got a different ending to the movie, and it ties in well with another movie that he then releases 2 years later. But it should leave you feeling unnerved. You should feel that afterwards. You should be sitting thinking the things that you've mentioned beforehand. If it has been powerful and impactful, if that is indeed even a word, feeling something afterwards. And if you then look at Fog and then go, that's creepy, I hope I can start seeing ungodly shapes with red eyes, coming to kill me with some sort of what I thought was some form of sickle. It's probably some sort of like pirate tool that they use in order to cut ropes or use for nets or whatever else it may be. But yeah, it's phenomenal in that aspect, and I think it can get the full 5 senses, or at least it invokes that throughout the course of the movie, which makes it really, really good.
And I've mentioned my dad a fair few times already, and I will continue probably because he's a funny lad. I remember as a kid, even whenever it was a foggy day and he's taken me to school, we've got to run, we've got to go quick. Why? You've seen the fog, you know what's going to happen. Yeah. He's a funny guy. But yeah, no, that for me that covers all the senses, and they complement each other really well. A lot of the time there's a standout, and with Carpenter films there is always a standout, and it's always the sound, but he's also very good at the rest of it as well. Like, they do complement each other very well. For that, I just want to kind of give verdicts even. So with all of that in mind, out of 5 gouged eyes, how would you go about rating The Fog?
Having rewatched the movie, I've not seen it since I watched it in that lighthouse, and I think I've caught up so much in the moment, in the feel of everything that was going on around me, that I possibly didn't pay as much attention as I possibly could to the actual movie itself. I'd give it 5 out of 5. So maybe 4.5, maybe 4 adults, and maybe, not to try and say too grim, maybe a child's eye. So 4.5.
So you'll give it 4 gouged eyes and a stomach pounder.
And a stomach pounder out of 5. Out of 5 because of it. For revisiting, I fell in love with the movie again, and I've noticed things about it. Possibly because we knew that we were going to be discussing it at some sort of length. I've taken more away from it than I ever did beforehand, and I appreciate it. And I will definitely go back and recommend it to people, or tell people to watch it again. And I think that's really, really good in order to revisit a movie. You will get some people who will watch a movie once and then have no inclination to ever see it again.
Yeah.
But things in your life, or your personal sort of approach to things, can change. Therefore, things will change whenever you rewatch it. You're in a different frame of mind. I was trying to be as receptive as I possibly could be watching it, and there was parts of it where I did pause and I was making notes, etc. But I took in so much more than I ever did with the movie. And with that in mind, yeah, like 4.5 out of 5. There are very few movies out there which will hit a 5 out of 5, because I think it's so difficult to get a movie that is perfect, especially with there being so much competition out there. But yeah, like I'd say 4.5 out of 5 personally, just based on everything that kind of we discussed, and then hearing other people's opinions on it as well makes me go, you know what, I never thought of it that way. So I think I appreciate it, and I think generally the rating goes up, and then in some ones it'll be like, oh yeah, but you know, that's kind of diminished the movie from you in a certain extent. But yeah, I absolutely thought it was phenomenal. Everything else that we've kind of discussed, the 5 senses, and knowing what I know about the director himself, the author, as you said, phenomenal. What about yourself out of 5?
Yeah, I mean, with this rating system as well, because with this coming from a place of love, there might be occasions where these ratings will give 1s and things. What that is, 0 is kind of a film exists, 1 is good. So to give it 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5, I completely agree. It would be 4.5. So 4 gouged out eyes and a stomach pounder. Out of 5 gouged eyes, 100%. But that just is a testament to how good it really is. That means if 0's 50%, we'll say, this is taking it all the way up to like 90 easily. For everything you've mentioned, it's a fun film to discuss. It's a fun film to revisit. And they go in tandem. After discussing it, I kind of want to watch it again. I just watched it last week.
I think that's a testament to it being great, is that you could go back and revisit it. It's not an overly long movie. I think that's the bit to throw people off, is if it's a say a long horror movie. And I think certain ones, not to go off on a tangent, like The Shining, I think it seems like a daunting task to watch the movie, because it seems as though, because time's drawn out, but that's more so for the protagonist that's in the movie. Whereas this one, it seems quite a breezy, like there's nothing wasted. Like you said, there is 0 fat through the course of that movie. It has a start and an ending, and then all the fun that just happens through the course of the journey. Loads and loads of fun, and it just breezes past, and it's very digestible, very enjoyable. But if you wish to take more away from it, then it affords you that luxury to be able to do it.
Definitely. I would encourage everyone listening here to go back and watch it. See if you can pick out the elements that we've discussed, the one mistake I found. If you find any more, great. But yeah, you've mentioned, obviously, we've got the Instagram page now as well.
Mm-hmm.
Once that's up and running fully, probably, and we'll have other things, write in. Let us know what you think of the show, for a start, and the films as well. And if you've got anything that we've never seen, even, you won't know what we've not seen, I guess. Just suggest things, that would be awesome. But with The Fog, 100% encourage it. We didn't really touch upon the remake in any way. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've not, and I think that's on me, because that's me being dismissive of a movie just because I love the original so much. You know, what can this remake do in order to best or have a different view or a different spin on a movie that I hold so dear, and now even more dearly than I did beforehand. And I think I could be dismissive of it, and you know what, I will go out and watch that movie to see if it has the same impact, or if it tries to say something different that the original didn't. You know, because there's plenty of remakes out there that are phenomenal. They're really, really good, and despite the insurmountable odds to try and do as well as that movie, in some cases it doesn't try to recreate the whale. It tries to do its own thing, and I'm completely for that, because somebody might be inspired by that particular movie, say The Fog, and then you go, I want to do my own version of The Fog, I want to do something different with it. So that's something I would have to remedy. I'd have to watch that movie and see what I thought of it.
Yeah, I actually got to see it at the pictures, and you'll get absolutely nothing from me. That's the last I'm actually going to say on it, because I don't want to subvert your opinions at all about it. And if anyone listening does write in, don't spoil it. But what was that Instagram page again?
Well, Mr. Hutton, that was at Podcasts in the Backseat. On Instagram, please, like I said, please message into us. We are still in the process of getting that up and running, and we'll get that sorted for you. Please message in with anything you wish for us to watch, anything we've never seen beforehand. We will gladly go through it, and even if there's something that we didn't wholeheartedly enjoy,
just
there will
give
be
us
always something there for us to enjoy. Yeah, exactly. We wish to expand our knowledge and see this as a means of us having an educational spin on it as well. We wish to learn as much as we possibly can, become richer for it.
Exactly. I think we're coming to the time when I've just gone back on there as well, so I want to thank you very, very much for joining me on this week's episode. It's been a pleasure again to speak to yourself, Mr. Wayne.
And it's been a pleasure speaking to you, Matt.
Thank you very much. Do tune in next time, where we'll have more of the same.
There will be a mixture of reviews every other week, and then in the weeks in between those, we will be sitting discussing a particular topic. If you wish to provide us with one, I said, please message in, and we'll gladly discuss it. Something that you've enjoyed, maybe a theory about a particular movie, we'll gladly go through that and pick it apart and have fun with it. Something that we maybe, because we're quite similar in certain respects, that we maybe would have not thought of. So we'll gladly do that and enjoy ourselves doing it as well. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, we've been...
Goodbye. Oh yeah, we have.
Podcast in the Backseat. We have been.
We have. We've been the podcast in the backseat, as you say. Have a good night.
Good night.